Buddy, thanks for being here. I'm Katie Earle from the Erie County Department of Senior Services, and we're back again with Jennifer Johnson from Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield of Western New York. Thank you, Jennifer.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Of course, it's always a pleasure with you. Quick shout out to our sponsors, my Department of Senior Services, Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield of Western New York, Excelsior Orthopedics, and Wegmans for making this program possible. And Senior Services is here for you if you have questions about benefits, services, you're looking to get involved, looking for things to do, give us a shout. We're at 858-8526. We'll be using our chat feature today or our Q&A, whichever tickles your fancy. So feel free to put any questions or comments into either of those. It's looking like we've got some regulars on, so you know where to find those. And we are recording, and if all goes as planned, I'll post it on our website in the near future. So the star of our show, Jennifer, has been with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Western New York since 2009. For over 20 years, she's worked with older adults in Medicare Advantage plans. She's a Western New York native and graduate of Canisius. She's a certified wellness coach, a certified nutrition and wellness consultant, specializing in fitness and wellness for older adults. She's also a registered yoga teacher and a certified personal trainer. She lives in Hamburg with her husband and son. She's a voracious reader and enjoys running, yoga, and cooking, and doing University Express. Thank you, Jennifer. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I love doing University Express. Excuse me. So thanks for having me today, and thanks for joining today. Today, we're going to be talking about fitness trackers, and this is a question I get a lot. I have a Fitbit or I have a Garmin, and it shows me all these different numbers, but I don't know if my numbers are good. I don't know if my numbers should be better. I don't know what any of these numbers actually mean and what my goals should be. So fitness trackers can be fantastic because they can really provide you with a ton of data. But if that data isn't meaningful to you, then it isn't helping you at all. So today we're going to talk about some common data that fitness trackers can provide you with. Every brand is going to be a little bit different. And even within brands, every model is going to be a little bit different. So it really depends on what you might have. You might have a really fancy one. You might have a really simple one. You could even a plain old regular old school pedometer, you could technically consider to be a fitness tracker. So it really depends on what you have. But we'll go through some of these different bits of information today that a fitness tracker might provide you with and what you might be able to use that information for. All right. So fitness trackers can really be a variety of different types of gadgets. So sometimes you might see them referred to as activity trackers, or a newer term is wearables. So they can be like a watch that you might wear on your wrist. They might be something more that you might clip on your waistband, like a pedometer. Some are even meant to clip on to like the strap of a tank top or a sports bra. So it really just depends on what style you buy. But they're usually worn on your wrist or clipped onto your clothing somewhere. The wrist worn ones, and I keep looking at my wrist because I have one on. But the ones you wear on your wrist, usually they're like a watch, okay? And they perform a lot of watch functions as well. But some of them are also more like bracelets, where they might not fit as tightly as a watch band would. So again, it really depends on your brand and your style. And they can be really simple or they can be really complex. It just depends on what exactly you're trying to measure and keep track of. Some really common brands that you probably heard of, Fitbit is probably the most common. Fitbit is kind of becoming that catch-all term for fitness trackers, you know, in the way that we call all tissues Kleenex, whether they're Kleenex brand or not. It's kind of becoming that for Fitbit. But there's also Garmin is a very popular brand. The Apple Watch, a lot of people have those. Jawbone is maybe a slightly less well-known brand, and then Samsung. So the same brands you're accustomed to seeing for other, other devices and other gadgets are what you're going to see in the fitness tracker category as well. Now, 1 second, I just can't get my slide to advance. There we go. So what kinds of information do they track? Well, what we've got here is just a list of some of the different things that fitness trackers might collect data on for you. And again, it's going to vary by brand and by model, but most fitness trackers are going to track these categories in different ways. So we're going to go through each of these individually. So the very first one is steps, right? Steps and correspondingly distance traveled. So even the simplest fitness tracker is going to track how many steps you take every day, and will convert that into the number of miles that you've traveled every day. Most fitness trackers can also, if you prefer, give you information in kilometers instead of in miles, if that's something that you prefer. So just like a plain old regular old school pedometer that you'd clip on your waist, your fitness tracker is going to tell you how many steps you take every day. Most fitness trackers are designed to accommodate an average stride length. So what does that mean? All of us, because we have different body sizes and different body types, and our legs are all different lengths, the length of our stride is a little bit different. And if you've ever done Route 66 with me in the past, we've talked about this. So everybody's stride is a little bit different, right? I'm a really short person, so my stride, the space between my feet when I'm walking, is going to be a little bit shorter than somebody who's got really long legs, and they can cover more ground in fewer steps. I need more steps to cover a mile than my husband, who's 6 feet tall, does, right? Pedometers and most fitness trackers are set up to accommodate an average stride length, which is usually about 30 inches. Most pedometers and most fitness trackers can be adjusted to accommodate your own stride length. I always tell people, don't worry about stride length unless you are an extremely tall or extremely short person. If you're kind of average, within that average range of of how tall a human might be, don't worry about it, because in the end, it's all gonna kind of average out. So don't worry about it too much. Now, if you're 6'8" or you're 4'7", maybe then you want to play around with it a little bit, but otherwise, don't worry about it. Most fitness trackers use that well-publicized benchmark of 10,000 steps per day. So most of your fitness trackers are going to be encouraging you to achieve that 10,000 steps per day. 10,000 steps per day is a really generic goal. It might not be right for you. And so because of that, you can usually customize that. So I have a Fitbit, I can go into the Fitbit app, I can poke around and I can adjust it so that every day my Fitbit encourages me to take 7,500 steps a day or 12,000 steps a day or whatever it is that I think is a good goal for me. Otherwise, most fitness trackers will default to 10,000 steps. And that's a reasonable goal for most people. Some trackers, depending on the model, they might give you reminders to reach a goal per hour. Mine likes me to take at least 250 steps per hour. And if I don't, it gives me a little reminder 10 minutes before the hour is up that maybe I should get up and move around a little bit. And sometimes that's really helpful, right? If you've been sedentary, you've been sitting at a desk working for a long time or sitting for a long time watching TV, it's good to have that little reminder to get up and move around a little bit. Some trackers give you a little cheer when you meet your goal for the day or you meet your goal for the hour. That can be really motivating for people. Um, and again, remember 10,000 steps a day is a rough goal. There is certainly some science and research behind it, but it might not be the right goal for everybody. So if you're a person who is just getting started with getting more activity, if you're recovering from an injury or illness, that might not be the right amount for you. Or on the other hand, if you're a really super active person, maybe 10,000 steps isn't the right goal for you. Maybe 12,000 or 15,000 steps is a better daily goal for you. So you might, when looking for a fitness tracker, you might want to look for one that you know will allow you to customize that number. Also, just as a little background, that 10,000 steps a day comes out to about 5 miles of walking per day. And I know 5 miles might sound like a lot if you don't get a lot of exercise right now, but that is that's all the steps you take every day. So that's the steps you take from your couch to the bathroom, and the steps you take walking around the grocery store, and the steps you take doing your housework, going out to the mailbox. So that includes all the steps you take every day, not just walking or running for exercise. Okay. Floors climbed. So many fitness trackers, and we're kind of getting away from simple pedometers now, but fitness trackers of the variety that we're talking about today use what's called an altimeter to determine the number of floors that you climb every day. And it doesn't actually know when you're going up a flight of stairs. What it measures is a change in elevation. So if if you were at a certain elevation a minute ago and now you're at a higher elevation, it realizes, oh, you've gone up. Okay, your elevation has changed. You must have climbed a flight of stairs. That isn't necessarily true. All it means is that your elevation changed. You're now higher than you were. Most fitness trackers require an elevation change of at least 10 feet to measure a floor. So if you can think of, if you have stairs in your house, if you can think of like, the flight of stairs going from your first floor to your basement, 12, 13 steps, something like that, is going to be a change of about 10 feet in elevation. So every time you change that amount of elevation through your own movement, the tracker will say, oh, you climbed a flight of stairs. The altimeter only tracks when you go up, so it does not track when you go down. Downhill or going downstairs does not count. And of course, the idea there is that climbing up a flight of stairs is more challenging than going down a flight of stairs. Some trackers will also track elevation change during activity. So for example, if you're running or jogging or you're hiking, it might measure your elevation change there. That can be really useful for somebody who is maybe training for a race, or who is planning a strenuous hike. So that could be some helpful information if you're preparing for some sort of activity that's going to involve elevation change. And I'll say this a few times during the course of our program today. If you are a serious athlete, so maybe you're a serious runner and you are planning, you're training for a race that's going to involve some elevation change. Well, if you're in the market for a fitness tracker, you really want to make sure you're looking for something that will track, that elevation for you. That's some information that you might find really useful and practical as you go through your training. My husband is a distance runner, and he runs a lot of trail races. So where he's out, in the woods on trails you might normally use for hiking, he's out running. And so that can be a lot of height, a lot of elevation. And so he uses a really specialized fitness watch that allows him to track that elevation over time so he can see how well trained he is for upcoming races. Not everybody needs that kind of specialized information, but if you do, you really want to make sure that you're looking into a fitness tracker that will track that for you. The one that I use will track my elevation during a run, but it won't track my elevation during a walk or a hike. So if I were planning on a really strenuous hike with a lot of elevation change, this might not be the right tracker for me. I might want something that's going to give me that information during other forms of activity besides running. There's no generalized recommendations for stair climbing. So no matter how many flights of stairs you climb during the day, there's no set goal. There's no organization that has set a goal or a recommendation for the number of flights of stairs we should all be climbing every day. However, there have been some studies done that show how people's health is impacted depending on the number of flights of stairs they climb every day. And so some of these studies have shown that climbing as few as 15 to 20 flights of stairs in the course of a week, so not even a day, but just in the course of a week, correlates with better longevity and presumably better health. So taking the stairs when you can is a good idea for most people. Stair climbing is a good activity because it's not something that we necessarily need to do a lot unless you have a lot of stairs in your home. Most of us probably only take a couple of flights of stairs, during a day. Even if you have like a 2-story home, you're probably not up and down the stairs 50 times a day. Maybe you do it 3 or 4 times. That's great. So it's an activity that you don't have to do a ton of in order to reap the benefits of it. So this is information that is helpful and interesting, but there isn't necessarily a goal for it unless it's a personal goal that you've set for yourself. Calories burned. So almost every fitness tracker is going to be able to tell you a number of calories that you've burned each day based on your activities. That's really helpful if you're trying to lose weight. However, the number of calories burned that you see on your fitness tracker might not necessarily be accurate. So the best way to make sure that those numbers are as accurate as possible is if you are using the associated app or website that goes along with your fitness tracker, and kind of keeping it updated with your information as you go along. So if you get let's say you get a fitness tracker for your birthday or for Christmas, some well-meaning friend or relative gives it to you, and you go in, you set up the fitness tracker and you plug in your current weight. Well, if you let's say you weigh 150 pounds, you plug in 150 pounds, that fitness tracker is going to estimate the number of calories that you burn every day as if you are always a 150-pound person. Let's say you get that fitness tracker and in 6 months, you've lost 10 pounds. Now you're a 140-pound person. That fitness tracker, if you haven't gone in to the app or the website and updated your weight, the fitness tracker still thinks you weigh 150 pounds. So it's still calculating your calories burned every day as if you were a 150-pound person. But if you only weigh 140 pounds, that fitness tracker is overestimating the number of calories you're burning every day. A person who weighs more burns more calories doing the same activity than a person who weighs less. So if you're using the tracker to keep track of the number of calories that you're burning every day, and you're using it as a helpful weight loss tool, you really want to make sure that you are using the associated app or website or whatever it is that the fitness tracker uses to periodically update your weight information so that you're getting the most accurate information back from your fitness tracker. And of course, the whole point of a fitness tracker or an activity tracker is to track your activity. So your fitness tracker, many of them can be used to track different sports, exercises, and activities. A lot of them can even identify your activity on their own. So simply based on what sort of movements you're doing. Sometimes they try really hard. I've been doing a lot of gardening lately, and really strenuous stuff, digging, digging out old shrubs and things that I don't want anymore, really aggressive sort of gardening. My poor fitness tracker, it doesn't know what I'm doing. So it always just says sport. It doesn't know what kind of sport I'm doing. It just says sport. However, many fitness trackers can figure out what kind of activity you're engaged in. So it might be able to deduce from your movements across your various planes of movement. It might be able to figure out that you're playing tennis, or you're going for a walk, or you're riding a bike, or you're doing yoga. So a lot of times fitness trackers are really smart nowadays. They have a lot of capabilities, and they can figure out on their own what kind of activity you're doing. You can also, on many fitness trackers, do a few little taps on the screen and plug in your activity. So if you are going outside to go for a walk, you tap a few buttons and tell the tracker, hey, I'm going for a walk, and it will measure your distance and your pace. And maybe might even map out your route depending on how fancy your tracker is. So you can plug in that information, or otherwise the tracker will simply track some sort of activity for you. It knows the difference between when you're moving and when you're sitting still. And some devices will remind you to get up and move if you've been sedentary for too long. And in my opinion, that is one of the greatest assets, or the greatest functions of a fitness tracker, because we do tend to sit. The average American sits for about 56 hours a week. That does not count the amount of time we spend sleeping. And so anything that gives us that little nudge to get up and move around, to reach your step goal for the day, I think is really great, really good for us. Heart rate is something else that fitness trackers, a lot of fitness trackers can measure. They can measure your heart rate during activity and while you're at rest. So this can be really useful for someone who's trying to reach a certain target heart rate during exercise, or if you're trying not to exceed a certain heart rate during exercise. That number is going to be different for different people, but it can be a useful tool. Keep in mind that fitness trackers, while really helpful, really functional, they can give us a lot of useful information, they are not medical devices. And so if you need to monitor your heart rate for health reasons, your doctor has told you, I don't want your heart rate to exceed 140 beats per minute while you're exercising, then you maybe need a tool that's going to be a little bit more accurate. In general, a heart rate monitor that has a chest strap, so you wear it across your chest over your heart while you're exercising, those are considered to be much more accurate than a wrist-worn or clip-on fitness device. So if that's a conversation you've had with your doctor, you may want to check with him or her to find out what sort of device you should be using to monitor your heart rate while you're exercising, and possibly also while you're at rest. I want to show you next this, I'll call it a poster, because if you've ever been, if you go to a gym or a fitness center, you've probably seen this poster on the wall at least once in your life. Really common in, I think, pretty much every gym I've ever been in. This is a poster that shows you how to calculate your heart rate while you're exercising. Down along the left side of the screen along the left side of the poster is different age brackets. And then it shows you different percentages. So if you were to take your heart rate either on your wrist, is like you're taking your pulse on your wrist, or taking it in your neck, counting it for 10 seconds. Okay, this is what you'd be looking for depending on what your target heart rate might be. So for most adults, most healthy adults, when we're at rest, we have a target, or we have a resting heart rate of between 60 and 100 beats per minute. Anywhere in that range is considered to be healthy. If you are an athlete or you are extremely active, your resting heart rate might be lower than 60. You might be 50 or 45, and that's fantastic. A lower resting heart rate is generally considered to be better. But when we're exercising, heart rates vary wildly. It depends on what type of activity you're doing. It depends on your age. It depends on what your goals are. So if you're exercising at a moderate rate, your heart rate is going to be lower than if you're exercising at a vigorous rate. So if you're walking, your heart rate is going to be lower than if you were running, right? If you're playing doubles tennis, your heart rate is probably going to be lower than if you were playing singles tennis. Okay, it depends on how much work you're doing. So your heart rate zone is something that gets a lot of attention, especially if you've ever worked with a personal trainer or an athletic coach, something where you've been training for some sort of event, or you've really been working to improve your fitness. And so that's why you'll see a poster like this in gyms across the country. In general, you start out by calculating your maximum heart rate, and the long-standing equation for that is to take the number 220 and then subtract your age. So that number, so 220 minus 50, for example, is going to give you 170. So your maximum heart rate would be 170. You wouldn't want your heart rate to go past 170 while you were exercising. And then based on your different goals, or based on your difficulty of exercise, you might be trying to work at 50% of your maximum heart rate, or you might be trying to work at 85% of your maximum heart rate, depending on what your goals are. So after all that information, which I know is a little complicated, and I apologize for that, I have always found heart rate to be a little bit complicated. But if you were, let's say, 50 years old, and you took your pulse or your heart rate during exercise, and you know that you're doing a very vigorous exercise, and so you want to be at about 80% of your maximum heart rate. So if you're 50 years old, you want to work at about 80% of your maximum heart rate, you'd follow the little graph over and you'd see 23. So you'd be looking at 23 beats in that 10-second little check. Okay, that's what you'd want to be calculating. So all you need is a clock or a watch with a second hand so that you can count off 10 seconds. You're taking your heart rate in your wrist or in your throat. And then by counting the number of beats in that 10-second time period, you know whether you're working at an appropriate heart rate for your particular goals. Your smartwatch or your fitness tracker can help you do that. So without having to stop and take your heart rate, you can look at your fitness tracker and it'll tell you what your heart rate is. So for example, right now I'm sitting, okay, so I'm sedentary, I'm not moving, but I'm also not resting because I'm talking and I'm gesturing. My heart rate right now is telling me I'm at 75 beats per minute. So that's pretty good. As long as I'm somewhere in between that 60 and 100 for a mostly resting heart rate, that's pretty good. So that's something useful that your fitness tracker, helpful information that it can give you. All right. Now we're getting into a little bit fancier of a couple of things, a couple of data, bits of data that your fitness tracker can provide for you. Many fitness trackers can measure the quality of your sleep. So especially if it's a wrist-worn model, you wear it at night just as if you'd keep a watch on while you sleep, and they can track data points like what time you fall asleep, can measure how frequently you wake during the night. So even if you don't get up and move around, but you're restless or you're tossing and turning, maybe you get up and you sit up in bed and you read for a little while, your fitness tracker can keep track of that for you, can measure how frequently you wake during the night, and can also measure the amount of time you spend in different stages of sleep. So it can measure the amount of time you spend in light sleep, deep sleep, and REM sleep or REM sleep. Using a fitness tracker to measure the quality of your sleep is not as accurate as measuring brain waves. So for example, if you're doing like a sleep study, using a fitness tracker isn't going to be as accurate as having a sleep study done, but it's a lot easier to wear a little watch at night rather than go and have a sleep study done. And it can give you some insight into your sleep habits and patterns, which can be really useful if sleep is something that you struggle with. Sorry, I jumped ahead a little bit there. So let's say you're tracking your sleep using a fitness tracker. How do you know what's good and what's not good? In healthy adults, anywhere from 13 to 23% of the time we spend sleeping is spent in deep sleep. So if you spend 8 hours sleeping a night, then 13 to 23% of that, math is not my strong suit, let's say 15. So you'd be spending a little over an hour in deep sleep if you sleep 8 hours per night. As we get older, we get less deep sleep. So if you've ever seen me present on sleep before, you've heard me say, as we get older, our sleep needs don't change. We still need the same amount of sleep, but our sleep patterns change. And so as we get older, we spend less time in deep sleep and more time in light sleep. And for those of you who are the grammar and spelling police, yes, I just noticed that there is a typo on this screen, which irritates me thoroughly. It should be sleep patterns, not sleep patterns. Sorry about that. REM sleep, REM, REM stands for rapid eye movement. Rapid eye movement takes up between 20 and 25% of our night. This is REM sleep is where most of our dreaming takes place. So the rest of our sleep is made up of light sleep, and there's no guidelines for light sleep. So if you're spending 13 to 23% in deep sleep, 20 to 25% in REM sleep, the rest of it is light sleep. So there's no minimum requirement for light sleep. So if you're tracking your sleep using a fitness tracker, then if you're falling into these categories here, you know that your sleep patterns are pretty good. A lot of different things can affect REM sleep. And when we don't get enough REM sleep, we can be really cranky. REM sleep is how our body takes our everyday activities and experiences and decides what to keep, so what needs to be stored as long-term memory, and what can kind of be tossed aside, right? This is how we turn our everyday activities into memory, right? So whether it's important to keep or maybe not so important. And our brain prioritizes REM sleep. So if we're having difficulty sleeping, and we're struggling with getting enough REM sleep, we're going to be cranky. But also, when you do finally sleep, your body will really prioritize that REM sleep. So if you go through a period of life where you're not sleeping well, and then you figure out what the problem is, you solve the problem, and you're able to start sleeping well again, you'll get a lot of REM sleep because your body will try to make up for that missed REM sleep during your periods of insomnia. And if you're using a fitness tracker to track your sleep, you'll notice that on the in the corresponding data. All right. Other bells and whistles. So the sleep, did I skip I think I skipped a slide. There we go. I knew I was missing something. Workout routines and pace. So pretty much any fitness tracker will track your activity. It will know when you're moving versus when you're sitting still. But some fitness trackers, especially the fancier ones, are going to be able to track your pace, your routines, and even map your walking, running, hiking, biking routes. Devices that come with a built-in GPS can actually map your route. So if you always walk or run the same route around your neighborhood, when you're done, you can look at a little map showing you where you were. It'll even have the street names, any bodies of water or things that might be nearby. And it will show you, okay, on your route, maybe you were a little bit faster here. Your pace was a little bit quicker. And then here, where maybe there was a hill, your pace was a little bit slower. So again, if you're training, if you're keeping track of your workout routines in that way, that can be really useful information. Oh, I'm a lot slower in this section because there's a lot of traffic and I'm being really careful. Or I'm faster on this section because that's the little downhill part of my route. So that can be useful information. If you're training, it can show you where you maybe need to work a little bit harder. Maybe you want to try to increase your pace while you're going up that hill. So that kind of information can be really useful depending on what it is you're trying to track. And I said this before, and I'll say it again, if you're a serious athlete in a particular sport, you might want a sport-specific watch. There are watches made specifically for runners. There are watches made specifically for swimmers, right? Because if you're a swimmer, the first thing you need is a watch that's waterproof. You may also want something that is going to track your laps or your splits if you're if you're trying to increase your pace. So things like that might be some of those additional bells and whistles we're going to look at on the next slide. But if you are a serious runner, a serious swimmer, a serious cyclist, you may want a sport-specific watch designed specifically for athletes of that sport. Other bells and whistles. So you can spend hundreds of dollars, maybe even thousands of dollars, I'm not sure, on a fitness tracker if you want to. Or you can spend, a much more reasonable amount of money. It really depends on what your needs are and what kind of data and information you're looking to track. If you're looking simply to track your steps, your activity, maybe your floors and your calories burned, you really only need a very simple fitness tracker. You don't need to overspend on something that has a lot of fancy information and measurements that you're never going to use. Some trackers are a little bit more like smartwatches that can be linked to your phone and tell you when you have a text or a call, can update you with emails and other alerts. Some trackers have the ability to assign you a fitness score. So these are generally very brand specific. So each brand might have its own trademarked fitness score that they can give you using different data. based on your activity levels, and generally using the app or corresponding website for the device can compare you with other people in similar demographics. So if that was something you were interested in, how do I compare to other 60-year-old runners? That some devices might be able to give you that sort of information. Some devices can display the weather, they can play music, so they can sync with music that you might have stored on your smartphone or on a MP3 player. Some can sync with your credit card for touchless payments. That, for some people that might sound super fancy and something you might not ever need, but if you're a runner or a cyclist, you might think, oh, wow, that sounds great. So, if I'm out running or, I'm on a really long bike ride and I want to pop into a convenience store to get a bottle of water, I don't have to carry money or a credit card with me. I can just sync my credit card to my fitness tracker and pay for it that way. And some devices can even link with your home voice controlled device. So if you have a little device at home that you talk to, like one of the Amazon or Google devices, some of them can even link with those, which can be convenient for some different services. So it really depends on how fancy you want to get. Some devices can also track things like your pulse oximetry, can take an EKG, or even measure your heart rate variability. So you can get as fancy as you want with fitness trackers. It all depends on what kind of information you're looking to collect and how much money you want to spend. So how do I pick the right one? It really depends. There's definitely a couple of questions you want to ask yourself. What features are you looking for? Okay, so again, do you need a sports specific watch? Do you want something with that credit card touchless payment capability? Do you want something that plays music? Do you want something that literally just measures your steps and your distance traveled? How simple or complex do you want to be? And I think that leads right into the next question, which is, how tech savvy are you? It's great to have a really fancy device, but if you don't know how to use it and you don't have anyone to show you how to use it, then that might not be the best choice for you. How much do you want to spend? Again, your options there are endless. Would you prefer a wrist-worn device or a clip-on style device? In my opinion, wrist-worn devices are a little bit safer in terms of not accidentally losing them. Clip-on devices are a little bit more likely to pop off in various circumstances. And maybe that's just my personal opinion. I can tell you, however, that my very first fitness tracker was a clip-on device. It clipped on to the strap of a tank top or a sports bra. And one day I got back from a run, took off my tank top, threw it in the washing machine, and washed my fitness tracker, and it never worked again. So just for me anyway, the wrist-worn device is a little bit safer. I'm less likely to throw it in the washing machine. Also, consider the warranty. Many fitness trackers come with a warranty, might be a year, might be 3 years. It all depends on the brand, the model, the style. So keep that in mind. If something does go wrong with it, you want to make sure that you're able to have it replaced. I've had a couple of devices that have just kind of conked out on me and have been able to replace them under my warranty. So that's been super helpful rather than having to shell out again for a new device. And what kind of features are you looking for? So for the most part, the information that you're able to get from your tracker while you're wearing it is going to be pretty standard. However, all devices are going to have an app or a website that you can go into plug in and update information. Some might come with a food log where you can go in and log what foods you're eating to keep track of your calories. You might be able to go in and update other bits of information. Some devices give you guided meditations, or some devices can give you stress management tools that, if you're going into the app or the website to use those, some of those tools might be hidden behind a paywall. So you might have to pay to upgrade to some of those more premium features. Some trackers only offer a subscription-based model. So in addition to purchasing the tracker, if you want to be able to go online and access some of that, some of those features, you have to pay for that. So consider what kind of model the fitness tracker manufacturer runs on their website or their app. That is it. That is all I have for you. It's very rare that I go under an hour. That's very exciting. I'm going to stop sharing and see if anyone has any questions for me.
Well, Jennifer, thank you so much for that thorough presentation.
Thank you.
And I had tech issues, so I had to bow out. I hope I didn't mess up anyone else's learning experience. I do
I,
apologize.
I saw you pop off and then pop back on, and I thought, oh dear, I hope I'm still on. I just kept
Yep,
going.
you didn't lose
Oh,
anybody.
good.
We'll take a second here to see if we have any questions in the chat or the Q&A. I am seeing a chat that says, "Thank you so much for this presentation. Now I feel like I know what I'm doing." I agree with that. We'll see if anything else comes through. I just think the clarity of the information that you just gave, especially the sleep and the steps, I think that was really valuable information.
Thanks. Yeah, it is interesting to look at your sleep data. And again, it may not be 100% accurate, but it does give you some idea. And it's helpful sometimes to be able to go back and look and see, like, um, okay, so this night I spent this much time in REM sleep. How come? Did I drink alcohol? Right? So alcohol can really impact how much time you spend in REM sleep. And so that can be just kind of a useful reminder, like, oh, maybe I was at a party and maybe I had two drinks when normally I would have one drink. Then the next day, if I go in and look at my sleep data, oh, I can really see how that impacted my REM sleep. So it's nice to kind of see those bits of data, and it gives you an idea of what your sleep patterns might be and where you might be able to adjust and improve.
Mhm. Oh, I think so.
Um,
Even if you're thinking, "Oh, I didn't sleep well," but then you look at your watch and, "Oh, maybe I did. I don't know."
yeah, yeah.
This comment came through. I found this really helpful. Thank you. One thing from my experience, I found Fitbit easier because it required less frequent charging than my Apple Watch.
Yeah, that's something to keep in mind too, is charge time. Um, how much time do you want to be offline in terms of your fitness tracker? I wear mine pretty much all day. I only take it off to shower. So I charge it, while I shower. And so in that amount of time, that, 20 minutes or 30 minutes, that every day seems to keep mine pretty well charged. But I'm sure that every brand is going to be different.
Mhm. That makes sense. Thank you. A couple of things else that pop in here. Do you have any information on the price ranges for particular features?
Oh, I mean, not offhand. Except to say that just like for everything else, right? Just like with cars and TVs and appliances, the fancier you get, the more expensive it's going to be. Um, so I mean, just to give you an example, I wear a really simple Fitbit. I think mine is called a Versa, um, which runs about. I just had to buy a new one a couple months ago. I think it ran about $100. My husband's sport specific running watch that tracks his elevation and broadcasts his runs to an app and all kinds of fancy stuff was about $350. So depending on what sort of features you're looking for, you could really, I mean, there can be a really huge price range.
Mhm. Yeah, I can imagine. Anything you would
Yeah.
want.
Yeah. So if you're really looking for something with a lot of features, you can get it, but you're going to pay for it.
Mhm.
And keep on the lookout because there are more and more devices coming out constantly. There are a lot of devices, also a lot of device manufacturers also sell scales, where you stand on the scale and it automatically syncs your weight to your device so that it can keep track of your weight and your calories burned. There are I just was reading that one manufacturer is working to develop a device that will track blood sugar levels, which would be incredibly useful for people with diabetes or prediabetes. So there's something new all the time.
It's hard to keep up. This, so we have, thank you for this, Jennifer and Katie. I found the sleep info very informative. Someone is wondering about how long would you say one of these lasts?
Um, they should last you a couple of years. Um, Sometimes, like a lot of appliances, they don't last much beyond their warranty. Um, so it kind of depends. Um, but you should be able to get several years out of a device. One other thing to keep in mind is to make sure if there's an app that goes along with your device, make sure you keep that updated. And you may also have to do updates on your device. So your device might need to be connected, for example, to your home Wi-Fi, um, so that you can update your device. Keeping your device updated with the most updated software will make it last longer.
That makes sense.
And if
This
you use
is
and if you use the app or the corresponding website, it should send you a little message. Hey, it's time to update your device.
There we go. This is, I saw Fitbit Charge 5, which has many of the features discussed today on Amazon Prime for $99.
Oh yeah, it's Prime Day, isn't it?
Oh, Prime Day.
I
Goodness,
think so.
probably.
So, and keep an eye out too. I haven't looked, but I know Target is doing a competing uh, deal day today. So maybe take a look at Target too.
Huh. This last comment is, I see the value in these, but still concerned. I have a family member who has one and is obsessed.
Just like any other device, right? I mean, you could spend all day looking at these numbers and looking at this data. And because it's health data about yourself, I think for some people, they really do get a little obsessed with it. And that can be sometimes an obsession with our health can become unhealthy. So that definitely is something that you want to keep in mind.
Yep, I agree. All right, we'll just give it another second here. Is there anything else you want us to know about this topic, Jennifer?
I I don't think so. It really is a very interesting topic. Even if you're not in the market, just next time you're at Best Buy or even Target, just go take a look around and just see the abundance that is available. It's really amazing when you think that, you know, you just used to wear a pedometer if you wanted to know how many steps you took every day. And now we've got all these fancy capabilities.
Hmm. Technology. So
Yep.
fascinating. Well, everyone who's on, thank you so much for your time today. Somebody said it is really a great watch. That's what it is. Oh, thanks, Annette. All right, Jennifer, thank you as always. We appreciate
Thank
your
you.
time and expertise. All right, everyone, enjoy
Thank
their
you.
day.
Take care. Bye bye.